Welcome to lesson 4.4, area of a triangle. In this lesson we're going to develop and use a formula to find the area of a triangle. So in previous lessons we have looked at the area of a parallelogram, as well as some of the different characteristics and relationships in circles. So today we're going to be looking specifically at triangles. So we're on page 144, 145 in your textbook. So if you recall to last lesson, we talked about the area of a parallelogram. And if you can recall what the definition of a parallelogram is, it's a four-sided object where all four sets of the lines are parallel to each other. So I've just kind of snipped a photo of a parallelogram, and if you can recall, what is the formula to find an area of a parallelogram? So I'll just put A of P, area of parallelogram. If you recall, that formula for the area is base times height. So essentially you'd look at the base number of your parallelogram and multiply that by the height, and that would give you the area for your full object. Because we know if we cut essentially the diagonal sides off and replace them, it would make a rectangle. And we know that the area of a square or rectangle is just the length times the width. So on your screen here you can see a picture of a parallelogram, and if you note, there's a diagonal line cut from one corner to one corner right through the parallelogram. If I was to do that for any parallelogram, what two shapes am I given? So if I look at this shape and I look at this shape, I'm given two triangles. So for the area of any triangle, it is essentially half of the size of an area of a parallelogram. So what we know about the relationship between the area of a triangle and the area, of a parallelogram, so I'll just put area of triangle. The area of one triangle is half of the size of the area of any parallelogram. And I don't want to figure out what the area of both triangles is, because that would just be the area of my parallelogram. If I just want to know what the area of one triangle is, it's half of the size of my area of my parallelogram. So essentially that formula looks something very similar to that of the parallelogram. So the area, so this is the formula for the area of a triangle. The area of your triangle is your base number multiplied by your height. So far it's exactly the same as area of a parallelogram, and divided by 2, because we know that a triangle is half of the size of that parallelogram. So let's do one example on the next slide. So knowing that the area of a triangle is equal to the base multiplied by the height divided by 2, so that's the formula that I'm just going to write in the corner so I'm going to remember. I'm going to go ahead and solve the area for this triangle right here. And again, I've just snipped this from page 144 in our book. So if I look at this triangle, I see two numbers. I see my base number, which is 6 centimeters, and I see my height of my triangle, which is 5 centimeters. So just like in previous units and what we've did in previous lessons within this unit, is we just plunk in the known numbers that we have into our formula, and then we're going to solve for area. So let's go ahead and do that. So I don't know what the area is for my triangle. That's what I'm solving for, so I'm going to keep that as a variable. I do know what my base number is. My base number is 6, and I know what my height is. I know my height is 5, and then divided by 2, that remains the same. That's not a variable, that's a constant. So now that I've plugged all my numbers in, I can just go ahead and solve. So area equals 6 multiplied by 5 is 30, divided by 2. So the area for this triangle is 15 centimeters squared. And please remember, whenever you're doing area, you always need to have your answer squared because it represents the whole area covered. Let's do one more example together where we're solving for maybe for the base or for the height if we have a given area. So we're going to do one more question together, and this question is slightly different, only in that we're not solving for the area. In this question, we are given the area. You know what, I'm just going to underline this. We're given the area, we're given our base number, and what we're trying to find the solution for is the height. But we're going to use exactly the same formula and our order of operations and our knowledge of solving for variables to figure this out. So again, we're going to use the exact same formula, so I'm just going to write it in the corner. So area equals base times height divided by 2, because that's the formula for any area of a triangle. So again, just like the last example, we're just going to look at the numbers that we have and we're going to plunk them right into our formula. So I know my area is 18, my base is 9, and I'm solving for my height. So I'm just going to plunk those right into this formula. So let's do that. So my area, I know, is 18 centimeters squared. So I'm going to replace that with the A in my formula. I know that my base number is 9, so I'm going to replace my 9 for my B in my formula. But I still don't know what my H is, so I'm going to leave that as a variable because we're solving for that variable. If you recall back to Unit 6 when we did solving equations, that's going to come in handy now. So looking at this is my equation that I'm going to use to solve for H. In other words, 9, sorry, my cat's having a little bit of a tantrum in the back here, 9 multiplied by what number divided by 2 would equal 18, and that will give us our height. So our first step whenever we're solving for any variable is we need to isolate this variable. So the first step that I can do is this part of the division without the h. So I'm going to look at 9 divided by 2. So I'm going to keep my 18 the same, and I can solve for 9 divided by 2. So 9 divided by 2 is 4.5, and then I still have my variable h, so I'm just going to leave that there. So my equation then looks like 18 equals 4.5 multiplied by my height. And again, I want to isolate this variable, but I have this 4.5 here that's kind of getting in my way. And I know that 4.5h represents 4.5 multiplied by h, and I know that the opposite operation of multiplication is division. So I'm going to divide by 4.5, and what I do to one side, I always have to do to the other side. So I'm going to divide 18 by 4.5. And then that becomes 4 equals h. So I've solved that my height of my triangle must equal 4 in order for the area to be 18 centimeters squared, but we always like to verify our equations and double check our work just to make sure we didn't make a mistake, so I'm going to do that. So I'm just going to plunk 4 back into my equation to make sure that it makes sense. So 18, I'm just going to go back to my original one, but I'm going to plunk 4 in here to make sure that both sides are equal. So 18 equals 9, which I know is my base, multiplied by 4, which is what I just solved for, divided by 2. 18, 9 times 4 is 36, divided by 2. And if I divide 36 by 2, I get 18, so I know that both sides of my equation are equal, and therefore my solution was correct.